Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Shivers 2 for the PC. Specifically, this was designed for Windows 3.11 back in 1997. That was actually the first operating system for my very first PC in college. I can't say I played this one back then, but I do remember the type of game for sure. I'm playing this game on a Windows 10 operating system, and I needed to use a hotfix I found online to get the game installed. It does work though, and although every now and again I do seem to get some slight graphical glitches, and if things tend to look off from time to time, that could be it. This is a Sierra Online game, and Sierra Online was huge back then for these types of PC adventures. The games were pretty much nothing like any of the games you'd see in a console back then. They were just a totally different breed of game. This was also the time when developers were trying to experiment with full motion video, or FMV, as an option to build a game. Sometimes they'd be in parts, sometimes they'd be an entire game. But generally this means we're talking film footage. They would film some footage and they would digitize it and figure out how to use it in a game. They also used a particular style of graphic textures. This was sort of early 3D environment rendering, and objects might look a little different. A little more mechanical looking, maybe a little more crude. Now before I get too much deeper into the game, this was a game that I featured in a recent pickup video. I scored this one for 50 cents at a local flea market. And it also happens to be the game that the YouTuber Metal Jesus is actually in. I believe he worked for the company back then. He's actually one of the band members in this game you see from time to time. I think that's neat enough. So this is the type of game you'd expect from Sierra Online. It's a point-and-click adventure. This was the predominant style of games they made, I believe, and if you're a fan of that style, this might be a good one for you to try. And this is the thing I found out about point-and-click games. In these games, you wander. You wander a lot. You have to remember too that this game came out in the early days of the internet, so videos on YouTube to help you figure out a game didn't exist back then. If you were lucky, maybe you could find some sort of a text walkthrough online. I know you can find them today, but back then those things didn't necessarily exist. This particular game, I found a video walkthrough online, and it takes about 3 hours to get through it, but if you were playing this back in the day, I'm willing to bet you'd have to multiply that number by 10 to get the actual game time it would take you to try to figure out a game like this. I mean, back in the 90s, we'd spend hours upon hours trying to figure out this stuff. Sometimes you'd probably just give up. There are usually very specific steps you have to accomplish to make progress in a game like this. You do have a little bit of latitude, usually, but overall, there are certain steps that you just have to get through. This might mean that there's a particular item in a room that you have to find, and it could be something that you didn't even recognize as an item that you could click. Now, as far as clicking on things in this particular adventure, I'm happy to say at least here we have a cursor that will glow when you can interact with something that you're moving over. So basically, you just need to scan everything in a room with your cursor to try to find out what items you can interact with. The story here is interesting enough, and I kinda like the setting. It is a horror game, basically, where your friends, who happen to be in a band, were kidnapped from this weird desert canyon town in Arizona. You're trying to rescue them. There are pretty much no characters in this game besides this initial encounter you have with the clerk at a hotel. I mean, I've wandered far through this game, nothing else is showing up. You do get some evil spirit voice from time to time. It likes to call you on the phone to threaten you. Anytime you enter a new place, you find a phone and it rings. That's kind of neat. But really, there are no people walking around. So is it a scary game? Not as far as I've gotten. I mean, it's definitely got the right color palette, and it's got some creepy imagery from time to time. The music is fitting, and I think the settings are reasonably well done. I'm just not seeing a lot of jump scares or anything. Or at least not yet, not as far as I've gotten into this. It's a little creepy, but it's not outright frightening. In this one, they've managed to mimic a 360 environment view. It's like they stitched a bunch of images together. You just rotate your mouse to the left or right to spin around, and that kind of makes it sometimes a little disorienting. The perspective gets a little off. In the cavern, where you have to go multiple times, it's kind of confusing when you move sometimes. I do find myself backtracking because maybe I took a corridor I thought was to the right or left, and instead I actually rotated 180 degrees backwards. So visually, it can be a little confusing from time to time. Now, you're staying at a hotel, and basically you open this one up visiting the worst clerk you're ever going to encounter at a hotel. He's pretty much kicking you out as you arrive. He's got a baseball bat in hand. But the room rate is pretty good, so what are you going to do? First thing is you go to your room and you do a bunch of basic research, I guess. You're going to check your luggage, you're going to check the answering machine, look for clues, that sort of thing. Eventually, you acquire an item called a Bajo stick. This is a prayer stick. Basically, there's a Native American theme going on here, and it works for this game for sure. You're going to be instructed to go to a cave on the edge of town and place this item in an altar. So basically, you have to get to the cave. You do have a map to get there, which is nice. I was wandering around a lot before I realized we had a map. So you get to the cave, and you wander around inside the cave, and you need to locate a particular puzzle that's been drawn on a cave wall. You're going to find a specific symbol, you're going to click it, and you're going to attempt to solve this puzzle. This, when you solve it, is going to open a box with a skull in another room. As you're wandering around these caves, you are going to slowly lose life, so there is a ticking clock here. If you take too long, you're going to die. If you solve the puzzle, you find the box in the other room, you click the skull and it'll open a door. Now, beyond the door, you're going to find an altar. The job is to place the Bajo stick into the correct spot in the altar. This is where you want to save your game, because if you get it wrong, it is going to reset the puzzle, you're going to lose the stick, and have to go back out and find it and start all over again. If you do put it in the correct spot, it's you going back to the town to find other puzzles to get new sticks to put in the altar to complete it. All the puzzles are going to be different. I found the next Bajo stick by arranging balls in some sort of a lottery machine. Took me a few minutes, but it's a low threat type of puzzle. Basically, you had to put them in sequential order. I can handle sequential order. After solving this one, I got the stick, went back to the cavern, put it in the altar. It worked. Now, after a while of wandering and some various trial and error, you sort of get the basics of what's happening here. You're going to search locations, you're going to listen to a lot of answering machines, and you're going to try to figure out how to solve all these weird puzzles. You're going to want to listen to everything you can find, you're going to want to read whatever paper you can find, because somewhere in there you're not only going to find a puzzle, but you're going to find instructions probably on how to solve some of the puzzles. These puzzles are not easy to figure out, not by any means. I found this weird egg puzzle. I have no idea what to do just by looking at it. No clue whatsoever. A little later on, I found a door puzzle. It has all these different symbols on these handles. I have no idea how to solve this. Obviously, some sort of an explanation is needed for these things. I'm guessing somewhere in the environment there is something to find to help explain what's going on. You're also going to find small televisions in a bunch of different locations. It seems that if you turn them on, it's going to do one of a few things. It's going to maybe play a rock video from the band, or maybe it'll teleport you back to the cavern. I think that happened to me once. Or it might just crash the program outright and send you back to the Windows desktop. One of those three is what I've been experiencing, so yeah, take that for what it's worth. Now there is a map you can use, and I have to say it's pretty great. You can actually fast travel using this map, at least to places that you've already been anyway. So after you've wandered around and found something, you can actually get back there pretty quick. It's going to be useful because you're probably not going to solve and find everything the first time through. I have to say, I went to this church, and that's when I recognized we had fast travel available. I just don't understand the purpose of this church, actually, now that I think about it. Look at these pictures on the wall. I have no idea what type of church this is. Very strange. Overall, I think this is actually kind of a difficult game for a point-and-click adventure. I found 5 or 6 of the puzzles so far. They are all vastly different, and I always thought I was pretty decent with puzzles. But looking at these are some obscure puzzle solves. I'm having trouble understanding the most basic mechanics of some of these. That makes it hard to solve a puzzle when you don't understand the fundamental solution that they're looking for. Also, I tried looking at a walkthrough online, and honestly, it did not help as much as I wanted it to. I think I might have to study the walkthrough just to understand what's supposed to happen. I don't know. I might just try to get through this game directly if I can get past this occasional crashing. I think it's worth it. Well, that's all I have today for Shivers 2 for the PC. Thanks for stopping by to give this game a look, and I'll catch you on another video.